Why they pushed it out until the 18th. Council meeting. Because
Isn't that the 18th? I'm getting a dollar from my. No, isn't that the 18th of September? Okay, because I think so. I'm sure looks like because we go to the bank convention and went to the Indiana convention. Today, so she could be fit. And so I told them, it's like, oh my God, we just when they said maybe a year, it's like, no, we have council because it's a week after Labor Day. I know we have to leave. It's just not. All these people we have to lose. Guess what? We can stay.
you're going to that French Lake.
We own the bank, so we get to go to, you know, for small things. Becomes hot. So we own the First National Bank of Monterey. You probably don't know where that's at. It's at 12 streets. So we have a ranch in Collier, and our main ranch is in Monterey.
Can you hear us okay?
When I
I can hear you, yes.
They got a claim conference there last week in September. French Lake.
Yes.
So what day are you teaching?
First.
My phone's still on the meeting. Landis? So we sit together. I figured he knows we're working on it. Grade school. And
We have not.
Owen's 6 and 7?
5 and 6.
5 and 6. And then Lincoln's 7 and 8.
Ask me my name, I'm like, I don't want to tell you. Let's say that.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'll call the finance meeting to order. First up will be the clubhouse discussion for the bond agreement, lease agreement, et cetera, et cetera. We have Lisa Lee on the television over here, and we have Andy. Andy, if you want to come on up and sit down. They're going to try to help us explain how this is all going to get put together and what we're looking at tonight. So Lisa, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the ability to join you virtually for this meeting. On the September 8th meeting, I will be in person, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be here virtually this evening. On the Dykeman Clubhouse project, we've gone through what we call the Build, Operate, Transfer, so BOT. So I'm going to just refer to it as BOT. We've gone through the BOT process, which is the same process the city went through for their recent police station. And the BOT process is really a construction procurement process. So it allows you to go through requests for proposals and take proposals from providers that would provide all of the engineering, architectural, construction, and then delivery of the final project. So that's really what BOT is about, build, operate, transfer. And we've been through those procedures, and Shepler Construction was awarded the BOT agreement or the BOT process, however you want to say it. What I would like, and Andy can help me with this, what we're looking at tonight with the council. We're not looking at taking any actual action this evening other than introducing this ordinance that you have, and hopefully you have in front of you. And what this ordinance is intended to do, you have a foundation that has been raising money to pay for this clubhouse. And they're raising up to $3 million. And they have a number of those funds already collected. but they have more to be collected over a 5 to 6 year period. So what we're looking to do is get a bank to enter into this BOT agreement with us and with Shepler, so with the city and with Shepler, to allow this transaction to be paid for as the grant funds come in. So the idea is whatever they already have on hand would be transferred to a segregated account of the city that can only be used for this project. And so that would kind of, what I call, as a bond lawyer, buy down the cost of the financing. And I don't know how much they have on hand. Andy might, but let's just say it's $500,000 in a $3 million project. So on the day of closing, $500,000 is in this account, segregated, yield restricted with the city, and that's a tax issue on the yield restriction. But that gets used first to start the construction. Start the engineering, start the construction, whatever ends up going. So then Andy and Baker Tilly are going out to the banks to finance $2.5 million instead of $3 million. Okay? So whatever they have on hand is going to get deposited and it's going to be used first. Okay? But because, contributions that have been, that people have said they're going to give over a 5-year period, that's not enough security for banks to give us money up front. So in this BOT agreement, we will be asking the city, and that's part of this ordinance that we're going to talk about tonight, we'll be asking the city to actually back up these grant contributions with an edit pledge. Because that's what's going to make this obligation marketable. And Andy will be able to talk about that more in a few minutes. So tonight, the ordinance, and we're only asking you to introduce it. We're not asking you to adopt it. But it will pledge the edit as a backup to the grant proceeds. And it is approving forms of a grant agreement that the foundation has already approved, and a form of lease agreement. And for any of you who do financings with schools, or it's not that kind of lease agreement. This lease agreement is simply giving Shepler Construction the authority to be on the property to build the project. So it's like an easement, but it just gives them a little bit more authority, and so they can go out and get insurance and all those types of things that they need to do to be on your property to build the project. So those are the two agreements that we're looking to introduce to approve and form, as well as the edit backup to the grant proceeds. We will then come back at your September meeting and we will ask you to adopt this ordinance, but we will also bring a resolution that authorizes the form of build, operate, transfer agreement and what we call a participation agreement. These two agreements are the meat of the process, and the reason we're not doing it tonight is I don't want to put something in front of you that, first of all, Shepler has never seen. And there's just all kinds of different things that need to be done to those two agreements. I mean, the draft is there, but it's not in substantially final form. And we don't need an ordinance to approve them, so we wanted to, in talking with Dave Morris and Jan Foley, we wanted to get a little more time on those two main agreements and get them in front of Shepler Construction and have some back and forth, so that when we do come in front of the council with those in September, they're much more in substantially final form than they would be right now. So that's basically what we are asking, is just to move this forward in an introduction perspective to the September 19 meeting.
And correct me if I'm wrong, now when we talked the other day, in the grant agreement, the Parks Foundation would then we would set up a fund of our own, and they would be transferring the donations into the fund we create on whatever timeline we agree to as we move.
That's absolutely correct. So what would happen is on the day of closing on the transaction, whatever funds they have on hand that are dedicated to this project, the foundation would transfer to a segregated yield restricted account of the city that can only be used for this project. And then we kind of talked about, and this is where Andy might be able to help a little bit, when he has discussions with the banks, we said, well, when it doesn't make sense if a $5,000 contributions comes into the foundation on one day, and then a $100 contribution comes in the next day, it doesn't make sense to just continually be trying to deposit that. So we want to work with the banks to say what makes sense. Is it every 30 days at the end of the month? Is it every 2 months? What makes sense for then transferring those funds to the segregated fund of the city? Because from a tax perspective, what we want, because, and I'm, as bond counsel, and we want these to be tax exempt, we need some kind of transfer that's on a kind of a regular basis, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then we want to be able, if we can, with the banks to say, okay, we can pay off that portion of the bond financing on that transfer date. We'll give you notice 20 days ahead of time, whatever they want, but we want to be able to take out that part of the debt so that interest stops on that part of the debt. So we just don't know until Andy's talking to the banks and we're working together what that timing makes sense. I mean, I don't want to ask Jan to be transferring funds once a week, or even once a month if the banks aren't going to let us pay off debt once a month. If the banks say, we'll let you pay off debt every 90 days, then foundation, you transfer it every 90, just before every 90 days, and then the city uses it to pay off that portion of the debt. So we're still working through those types of timing issues.
You guys have any questions for her at this point? You want Andy to kind of go through his now, or you got more?
Be great. No, I would love to have Andy offer his insights.
Okay. Well, thanks, Lisa, and thanks, council members. I did pass around a set of numbers here this evening, so I wanted to kind of put an analysis together that shows hopefully what we talked about a few weeks ago, and then what Lisa just described here this evening. So this is kind of a financing analysis that shows what we think would be a kind of structured repayment of the financing. And then also what we think could be the anticipated repayment of the financing, kind of based on timing of when those pledges are expected to come in. So I'll just flip through this. Feel free to kind of stop me as I go with any questions. But the second page, page 2, takes a look at kind of a cost and funding. Again, looking at about a $2.5 million project. As Lisa mentioned, the goal will be to have any pledges that are on hand at the foundation at closing be used for construction up front. So we're showing about $575,000 that's anticipated to be available by October that would be used for construction, and then the remainder would be through about a $2.1 million borrowing. The next page, page 3, looks at what we think that repayment on a $2.1 million borrowing could look like. We've currently estimated an interest rate of about 4.5%. I will note that the police station financing from a couple years ago was a 3.95% interest rate, obviously a little bit higher here. The market has moved that direction, but that financing on the police station was a little bit longer-term financing, which typically would have a higher interest rate. So I'm hoping the 4.5 here has some cushion in it. That should be kind of a good conservative estimate. So we've shown, that repayment over a 5-year period of the $2.1 million. You can see total interest of about $294,000. So total annual payments of about $475,000 for the 5 years through the financing. We then, on page 4, took that anticipated debt service and then compared that to the timing of when the remaining pledges are expected to come in. So you can see there we're showing beginning cash on hand for the donations that would be expected to come in each 6-month period. So everything basically between October and January of 2025 in the first column. Second column would be anything from January of 2025 through July of 2025. And then we've compared that to those scheduled debt service payments. So you'll see the about $235,000 semi-annually through the life of the financing. You can see there, we're showing a pretty healthy balance in the pledges all the way through. It would peak at about just under $700,000. And then after full repayment of the obligation, you'd have about $98,000 remaining. So that's with the scheduled repayment. That gives you a little bit of extra cushion in case there's any delay in pledges. But again, would show the full repayment from pledges across the 5-year period. The next page, page 5, shows what we think is a more likely anticipated repayment. So we'll, as Lisa mentioned, work with the banks to come up with essentially redemption provisions, the ability to pay the bonds off or the financing off prior to maturity. So you can see there what we've actually done is basically accelerated those principal payments. So if you kind of flip back to page 3, you'll notice on page 3, we were showing full repayment by January of 2030. On page 5, we're showing full repayment by July of 2028. By being able to utilize those pledges as they come in quicker, it pays down the financing in a much shorter term, knocks about 18 months off, and then you'll see reduces the total interest from just under $300,000 down to a little bit over $200,000, about an $80,000, $90,000 savings in total interest. Then on page 6, again, this kind of looks at the same analysis, looking at the pledge balances as those come in every 6 months, and then essentially maximizing the debt service repayment every 6 months. So you'll see that ending balance for the pledges does drop pretty close to zero, and that really just represents utilizing what's ever available to pay down as much principal as we can every 6 months. To the extent we're able to do it sooner than every 6 months, whether that's monthly, every 90 days, as Lisa mentioned, that should decrease the interest paid as well. But you'll see under this scenario, you're left with about $180,000 at the end, again, compared to that about $98,000, so about another $80,000. And again, that's additional cushion in case there's any issues with pledges, or assuming pledges come in as expected, then that's additional money that you could put into the project at conclusion. Looking at about $180,000. And then the last page really just shows, I know we'd had some conversations at previous meetings, whether we were looking at bond anticipation note, a Park District bond. This just gives you kind of some of the logic behind this mechanism, which is a lease directly through the build operate transfer. You've got about $1.6 million in debt limit available through the city. Again, we're at about a $2.1 million borrowing. And then you've got about $3.2 million available through your Park District. But to issue it through the Park District, we would have to put a property tax behind it. So this keeps it outside the city's debt limit, but then also doesn't require you to put any sort of property tax backup behind it as well. And then the pledging of the economic development income tax, I think, should result, in the lowest interest rate, that 4.5%, and hopefully lower that we're showing there. And that should also serve to protect your economic development income tax once it's pledged to an obligation. that limits any changes to that rate in the future. So that should protect the city's distribution going forward, much like what you've done with your public safety local income tax. So I guess I'll pause there. Any questions on the numbers or kind of how they tie into the ordinance?
Have you reached out to the locals yet, Andy, and the local banks and whatnot yet, or?
We have not. We are putting together a request for proposals, and our plan is to go get that out to any local banks that you would like us to submit it to, as well as more regional, statewide, national banks that also typically would purchase something like this, and then give them 2 weeks to respond. So typically, banks want to know that we're ready to go
Right.
before they'll submit a response. So we would anticipate doing that here in the next few weeks.
You still have like the list for the police station?
We do, and then I'll certainly confirm that with the city, whether you want us to include those and any additional as well.
So this covers, I mean, the schedules we're looking at, it covers all the interest through the process, and if everything goes smoothly, we never have to touch our CEDAT funds, correct?
Correct, other than the 200,000 per year that is part of those pledges.
Our obligation, yeah,
Correct.
our commitment, yeah.
Yes, assuming everything goes, as we're showing here, again, that 4.5% interest rate, we're showing that you would never utilize any additional CEDAT, and then you would have about 180,000 in pledges available at conclusion, which again would be more money to potentially put into the project at the end. And certainly to the extent that rate's lower, that would only increase that number.
Jan or Kyle, didn't you guys tell me to date, all of your pledges are up to date and everybody's, is it?
One of those, Ian?
Yeah.
Does have any questions for Andy, or?
So Andy, these scheduled payments and these numbers that you've come up with are based on your reviewing the pledges and the dates that people have committed to pay them, is that correct?
Correct. So Jan was kind enough to provide us with kind of an updated schedule of when she anticipates the pledges coming in. So that's based on, again, what they have in the bank currently, kind of what they anticipate coming in between now and October, and then really everything from October through the end of 2028.
And so this analysis that you've given us is based on every 6 months?
Correct.
Okay, so at this 4.5% interest rate, do you anticipate, like, how quick are you going to be talking to banks? Because I think that the interest rates are going to come down within the next, like, the Federal Reserve is going to meet in September, and I expect the interest rates to be lowered at that time, so how quick are you talking to these banks?
So our plan would be, I think, to go out, probably to submit submit the request for proposals to banks prior to your September 8th meeting, or September 18th, and then assuming it's approved at that meeting, then we would receive proposals following that September 18th meeting, and typically give banks about 2 weeks to respond. We'd be looking at probably late September, early October for proposals.
Okay. But this 4.5% it's not solid, it's just your anticipation.
Correct. That's just an estimate at this point.
Okay.
But again, that's an estimate based on what we would see similar financings, especially payable from a local income tax with the strength that yours has. Yours is not pledged to any other obligations, so coverage levels are very strong, and that should be something that's very appealing to banks.
That was my next question, was to ask if we were committed to anything else. Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything for him? Jan, you guys have any questions for Andy? All right, well, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
You guys, we okay with moving this stuff to the council meeting? All right, very good. We have a couple other things here, most of them are fairly simple items here. Jan put in a request, I'll go to the second thing here, to have her auction proceeds utilized for Christmas in the park. And typically what we've done in past years is any department that had funds and had something they wanted to specifically utilize those funds for the proceeds of the auction, we would allow that. So if you guys have any concerns about that, I sent you all the numbers. I think the police department has 1,660, street department brought in 9,686, parks had 2,242, and golf had 3,705. So if they want to specifically mention that, we could, the intent would be to move this forward if everybody's okay with it and put it on the September agenda.
Sounds good.
Very good. All right, what else? Oh, I wanted to kind of bring you guys up to speed. We did, Susie got with Craig Renneman, he's an arborist. He did a look over on the trees up on the boulevard. A couple notes that he left us with, and Susie, jump in there if I don't do this exactly the right way, but he said he didn't feel like we should just go up there and take all them trees out at one time. He didn't think a lot of them needed to be taken out right away. He said there's a few that could probably be taken out, but to maybe, if you were going to consider working on the boulevard, to do it in stages so it didn't look so bare all at one time. Let's see. That's really about all that he said. There were a few of the trees he said didn't need any attention at all, that the other fellow had mentioned maybe trimming them. But lastly, comes down to the point of we just really don't have the funds available this year for this. What I'd like to do is maybe pinpoint the trees that we think really need to come out, get 2 or 3 estimates on them, and then put that in next year's budget so that we'd have it available after first of the year to have them work on those trees.
And also for the trees that, like what we should do is get a detailed list from Craig, and he can tell us, just like you said, which trees need to come out right now. But then we also need a cost to replace the trees, because we don't want to take trees out that we're not replacing.
Right, well, we have that list, and we can go off this list as to what we want to put back in there. Spring Creek is typically who we go to for that sort of thing. I think they're actually the only local one around, but...
Well, Dave, I wondered if it was okay with you if I asked Craig to put together a different list than this one, and what he thinks the time frame should be for the trees, because then that would help us be able to decide, how much money we're going to allot.
If he could come up with a sequence on how he thought we ought to take them out and all that, then the people that would bid on it would know exactly which ones they were bidding on as we went through there.
So is it okay with you if I asked him to put that list together for us?
You guys all right with that?
Craig is your guy?
Craig Renneman, Craig?
No, but.
He does all of our doesn't he do all our downtown work?
Excuse me?
You notify he's Craig guy and.
Yeah, Craig Renneman,
He does the west.
Yeah,
well, he does the downtown trees.
yeah.
Yeah, he does
And
downtown.
he's brilliant, you guys, like, if he tells you what to do with the trees, do it.
With Spring Creek when they're looking at trees to replace.
Okay.
But we just don't, the point that Craig's making is you don't just go up there and, mow all the trees down and, plant some new ones, because it's gonna look deserted, so we need to just do it in a timely fashion, and also it's not that it won't eventually cost us the same amount of money, but we can do it in parts instead of spending it all at one time.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to him tomorrow about that, Dave.
Okay. All righty. And the last thing is, we have a maintenance fund for the memorial home, and they're on we have some projects that are going to be done on Live United Day, and we're needing to bring a dumpster in there. So I'd like to spend some money out of our maintenance fund to bring a dumpster in there so they can utilize that.
That's a good idea.
Everybody okay with that? All right. That will be the end of the Finance Committee meeting at 6:27. Okay. Public meeting. Ready?
6:28 PM, Monday, August 26, 2024. I'm Chris Martin, calling to order a public hearing for ordinance 2024-18. Tony, did you want to come up and explain the project?
Basically, you want me to help you here, Tony?
Well, yeah, I mean, Monticello Road was a safe, it needed paved, it was a safe one to pave without a,
Basically, the public hearing is for the 45,000 additional
Right.
appropriation. We have to.
and, I mean, the westbound lane alone was 3/4 of a mile. There was a little bit on the eastbound side to do too. And, our paving budget just didn't cover the whole cost of milling and paving and restriping. So we had to ask for some more money. Yeah, we're still I need to get a hold of, I can't think of the name, but the consulting firm is doing our pavement asset management. I'm not sure how far they are.
Oh,
DLZ.
Yeah,
There it is.
DLZ.
I knew it was there somewhere. But I need to get hold of them, see how close they are to finishing that, because that's got to be done for community crossings next week.
Anybody have any questions about the appropriation?
Nope.
Any public comment? Very good. Appreciate your work, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
6:30 PM, we will call the public hearing to an end. And with it being 6:30 PM, I'm Mayor Chris Martin, calling to order the regular session of the Logansport Common Council. Today, we will start with a moment of silence for Corporal Humberto Sanchez. All right. And now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dave Morris,
Present.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Present.
BJ Cox,
Present.
Scott Peedy,
Present.
Cameron Austin,
Present.
Susie Walmsley,
Present?
Chris Howard.
Present.
Next is the approval of minutes for the regular session's August 5th, 2024 meeting.
Make a motion.
Second. Any further discussion? Call for question.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Susie Walmsley,
Yes?
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Scott Peedy,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Reports from committees, boards, and commissions.
Mayor, we had a Finance Committee meeting tonight. Topics on the Finance Committee meeting were the clubhouse bond agreement and the agreements that go along with that, auction proceeds, the trees on the boulevard, and a dumpster for the memorial home. And the couple of the agreements for the clubhouse are on tonight's agenda.
Any other reports from committees, boards, and commissions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to old business, ordinance 2024-18. Councilman Cox?
Ordinance 2024-18, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, approving the expenditure of funds for the repaving of Monticello Road.
Second reading, Mr. Mayor, I ask for a vote on ordinance 2024-18.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question. Dave Morris,
Yes.
Scott Petey. Yes. BJ Cox,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-18 passes on its second reading. Ordinance 2024-20, Councilwoman Wamsley.
Ordinance 2024-20, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, approving the sale of a 230 kV transmission line. Second reading, I move for a vote on ordinance 2024-20.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Go ahead, Greg.
Any questions for Greg?
Thanks for doing the first one without me here. I was on vacation. I appreciate that. I said I'd come to this one and answer any questions. The process doesn't stop here. I'll be testifying in front of the Indiana Regulatory Commission to follow this up. There's 4 agreements that go along with this. Closing of this sale will probably happen mid-first quarter of 2025. Kelly Lehman's been very, very helpful in this. I appreciate all of his support. It's gone well. And here's how I summarize this to people. This is a great way for us to take a liability and turn it into a benefit and still use the asset for the utility and the people of Logansport's betterment. So it's a good thing. We just found somebody who wanted to buy it.
Any further discussion on ordinance 2024-20?
Can I ask you just a couple questions, Greg?
You may.
The MISO charges, I'm sort of muddled through your asset agreement, but no bearing on the MISO charges whatsoever?
Yeah, we'll get the same MISO pass-through charges as we would get normally on that line. So if they upgrade that to any significant amount, the way it works is everybody pays the increase. So if they invest $20 million in upgrading that line, everybody in the MISO system pays that, and we would pay our fair share of that, which would be very, very small. So we ourselves would not get a direct fee from them. We've got a 35-year agreement that says we can use that line that has automatic renewal in it. They're not charging us to use that line, just the standard MISO charges, which you see on our books every day. But just like any other upgrade that gets done by a transmission company, they get rate of return through all ratepayers in MISO.
So anyone that falls within that territory that does something, we all pay for it?
Exactly.
Okay. That was really, the one thing.
Yeah. We calculated it at $20 million and it was a pretty insignificant number.
We have a motion and a second. Call for question. Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Scott Petey,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Dave Morris,
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-20 passes on its second reading.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Greg. All right, on to new business, resolution 2024-139. Councilman Howard.
Resolution 2024-139, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, authorizing the expenditure of miscellaneous council funds for the startup costs associated with the downtown designated outdoor refreshment area, otherwise known as DORA. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a vote on resolution 2024-139.
Second. Any further discussion? Call for question. Dave Morris,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
No.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Scott Petey,
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Resolution 2024-139 passes. Ordinance 2024-21, Councilwoman Zinsmaster.
Ordinance 2024-21, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, pledging certain local income tax revenues and approving forms of lease agreement and grant agreement, And I would ask for a vote on ordinance 2024-21.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Scott Petey? Yes. Dave Morris?
Yes.
Cameron Austin?
Yes.
BJ Cox?
Yes.
Chris Howard?
Yes.
Susie Wamsley?
Yes?
Haley Zensmaster?
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-21 passes on its first reading. Any public comments? Anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for us, please. Seeing none, council member comments? Also seeing miscellaneous business and any matters no longer be considered, including ADA Section 504 compliance or concerns. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
No move. Second.
Call for question.
Haley Zensmaster?
Yes.
Susie Wamsley?
Yes?
Chris Howard?
Yes.
BJ Cox?
Yes.
Cameron Austin?
Yes.
Dave Morris?
Yes.
Scott Petey?
Yes.
We are adjourned. Have a great night.